Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I couldn't upload yesterday because I just had my GRE on Sunday and I was pretty tired after that. It went okay. I could have done better if I had worked harder. But what's an exam without regretting how much you studied or didn't study, right? Which actually reminds me of a book I read this past week. It's called The Midnight Library. The book is about a girl who decides to take her own life, and she's in the state of limbo, so she's not alive and she's not entirely crossed over to the land of the dead. And in the middle of it, she goes to this library which contains all of these books, where every single book represents a life she could have had, infinite possibilities. And it's not just like big decisions such as I should have married a different person or I should have had a different career. It's every single decision you take in the course of your life. Deciding to wake up at 7 a.m. instead of 6 a.m., or deciding to work out on Tuesday instead of on Wednesday. And the first thing she sees is like a book of regrets, which is a huge fat book in her case. And she gets to decide which one of her regrets she wants to correct. I mean, I'm not going to tell you the whole story if in case you want to read it, so I don't want to spoil that for you. But it's definitely an interesting read on the whole. The thing that I didn't like about the protagonist of the story is that she got a chance to live out all of these other lives she could have had, which is something, I don't know if you guys do that, but I definitely do that. Like, fantasize about how differently your life could have gone. Not necessarily in the way of like a regret, but just in the way of a thought exercise. If I hadn't picked the masters that I picked, or if I hadn't gone to law school, what I would be doing instead. Basically, she gets to live out all of these different versions of her life, and at the end decide that the life she has was quite good, in fact. But that really didn't solve any problem, because that's not the essence of living. If you got a chance to live out all of your possible lives, and then after trying out everything you decide, what, like, the life I have is pretty decent, then you're not really committed to living fully. You're just someone who has exhausted all options and then decided that this is the lesser of the two evils. Do you know what I mean? It's like when people are dating in movies or books or shows or whatever, and one of them says that they would like a break from the other person because they want to check out and see what's out there. And they do that, they check out other potential options, and then they come back to their partner. I always thought that's not really commitment, then, is it? Because you've gone around, seen what's available, and then decided that what you have is good enough, when in fact you should have made that decision right from the get go. Deciding what you have is good enough after seeing that everything else is trash isn't really deciding what you have is good enough. There's something about that puts me off. I wasn't a fan of the ending. On the whole, it was like a 3 on 5 read for me, probably lower than that, but I find it difficult to read books very harshly. And the book also like tried to incorporate a lot of elements from quantum physics, where they talk about the multiverse. Those themes were quite prevalent in the book, which right now I've gotten a little sick of reading about that. I've seen the same theme done by different books in a much better way. For example, there's a book called The Cost of Living by Deborah Levy. Maybe it's Levi, I'm not sure. Deborah Levy, this book deals with the same thing, which is essence of living, or like how you can have a good life. And I thought that dealt with the topic in a much better way. I'm also pretty excited about the new trailer for the House of Dragon. I was massively disappointed in the 8th season, but I can't help it. I'm excited again to watch that whole thing. And I think this time it's based on the Dance of Dragons. The only place where he talks about the Dance of Dragon is in this book called Fire and Blood, which is a summary of the history of Westeros from Aegon's conquest to Aegon the Third. So I already know what's gonna happen in Dance of Dragon, but this commentator that I like said that because we just know the major plot points and we know how it ends, it's gonna be a lot more exciting than Game of Thrones, because there isn't any subject matter as such on which it's based. Like, in Game of Thrones, all the characters were fully developed. There were, I think, 5 books have been released. We're still waiting on the 6th. God knows when he's gonna do that. But unlike that, for Dance of Dragons, we just know the major plot points. We don't really have any insight into what the characters are like, which makes this series a lot more exciting than Game of Thrones was. So I'm pretty excited about that. I don't know if I'm going too much into Game of Thrones, but like, I love it, so I'll probably spend a bit of time talking about it. But I think the way that it's set up is that Rhaenyra Targaryen is the protagonist, and the antagonist is her brother Aegon II and his mom, Queen Alicent. I think the comparisons that people have been drawing have been to Cersei and Joffrey, but I'm a little skeptical. I don't think it's the theme. When I read Fire and Blood, that didn't really come off. I think there isn't a protagonist, it's basically just a civil war. You know, like how in the Game of Thrones we were all supporting the Starks because they were so much better and so much nicer. In this case, it's Targaryens versus Targaryens, so I don't even know if there's anybody to support. One person that I'm really looking forward to seeing is Aemon. He's Aegon the Second's brother, and for some reason, I just think he's gonna be a super hot character. Plus, like dragon fights, the only dragon fight we got in Game of Thrones was that really horrible one right in the last season, which didn't make sense. But this time it's going to be full of dragons, and I think the producers have confirmed that at least 17 of the 18 dragons in the original story are going to make an appearance. So that's something I'm super excited about. So after watching the trailer and after going back and reading Fire and Blood again, it put me in an epic fantasy mood. And I have just started reading the Accursed Kings books. Sharon, is it trilogy or trilogy? So the Accursed King trilogy, which starts with the Iron Kings. Hi, so bit of a change because I had to go and wash my hair. The Accursed King trilogy starts with the Iron King, and I think the story follows the royal family of France at the time of the 100 Years' War between France and England. So it's not epic fantasy per se, it's more along the lines of historical fiction. And George R.R. Martin has actually said a couple of times that this was one of his biggest source materials for writing the Game of Thrones. So I'm quite excited to read this. I have been meaning to get to this book for a while now, but I was caught up and then in the middle I forgot about it. I'm going on a trip, but I'm not going to have Netflix for a lot of days, so I'm hoping I get a major part of the reading done, which reminds me I have to go pack. So I will see you guys later. Ciao.